Okay, so let's answer the questions about factoring by grouping. What you got first? Can you read me the question?
28 r squared plus 35 ry minus 4x
4x?
4x
4xr? Okay.
minus 5xy.
Okay. So first thing you do, we're told to factor this. So the first thing we're going to do is what? Look first for the GCF for every term. But is there anything that will divide into 28, 35, 4, and 5? Is there an x in all of them? An r in all of them? A y in all of them? So there is no GCF for every term. What's the next step? Not grouping, but what? What's step 2? What? Count the number of terms. There you go. Why do I have to know how many terms? To know what method to use. Yeah, be careful. You've got to learn these steps in order. We don't like to learn the names or the steps. We just like to do them. We don't even like to do them, but you know what I mean. We focus on doing them instead of learning what they are. But if you don't know where you're going, you're very unlikely to get there. Okay? Because remember, when we're going to add more types of factoring going on. So count the number of terms. How many terms do I have here? 4, which factors using the method called grouping. The first step in grouping is to what? Separate the first 2 terms from the second 2 terms. So it's going to split right there after that ry. And then I go back and find the GCF in each group. First, 28 and 35 will divide by what? 7. There's also a what in both of them? R. So I can divide out of 7r. 28 divided by 7 is 4. R squared divided by r is r. Plus 5. The r's will divide away, so there's either the y. Okay. What do I do with this minus? Bring it down. There's nothing to divide into 4 and 5, but what is common to both of these terms? The x's. But remember, I already have a sign there, right? So I'm dividing by what kind of x? So it's not only going to take out the x's, it's also going to change all of the signs. So negative 4xr is going to become positive 4r. Negative 5xy is going to become positive 5y. And what do you notice about the 2 sets of parentheses? And they have to. They have to be, yeah. So you get 4r plus 5y in the first parentheses and 7r minus x in the second one. And would it be okay if those parentheses were reversed? Sure, as long as they had the same stuff in them. Okay. Trust the method. Don't try to reinvent the wheel here. Just doggedly follow the method. Look at the numbers, but look at them carefully. And this one is a little weird because they use 7 as the common factor, but that's okay. Right? What else? You change the order? Can you give me one? Is that one block you had here?
I thought it was. I worked it out both ways and got the same answer.
Okay. So you didn't have to rearrange it first, or you did?
I didn't. No, I rearranged it first and I got an answer.
Okay.
It was right, and then I just did it the other way, like normal way, because I figured I could, and then I got the same answer.
Okay. Go ahead and read it to me. Let's see.
Y squared plus 30x plus 6y plus 5x.
Okay. So there's no GCF for every term. Nothing to divide evenly into all of them. We have 4 terms, so we're going to factor it by grouping. But when we try that, look at what happens. Do y squared and 30x have a common factor? No. We could divide out a 1 if you can try it that way. Bring down your plus. Is there anything to divide into these 2? The y. But when you divide it by y, you get 6 plus 5x. And what do you notice about those 2 sets of parentheses? They don't match. So what that tells me one of 2 things. Either it won't factor at all, but you know that every one of these in this exercise factored, right? I told you that before we began. So what it does tell me is that I need to reorder it. Now I could put it in order according to the x's or the y's. Which one do you want to use? I'd use the y's. Why? Because the y has a square and the x doesn't. But could you have put it in order by the x's? Yeah, we did that one like that last time. So if I'm going to put it in order of y's, which term would come first? Yeah, anything with a square would come first. So the y squared. After y squared, I would use anything that's just what? Plain old y. So which term has a plain old y? Positive 6y. Good. After that would be anything that has a y and another letter in it. So which term would come next? Plus 5xy. Yeah. So you see what's happening? Y squareds, then plain y's, then anything with y and another letter, and what's going to come at the end? Plus 30x. The thing that has no y in it at all would always come at the end. Okay? So do you see the logic there? Okay? Now we'll try to break it in half. Well, we'll divide into the first two. Divide out of y, you get y plus 6. Bring down your plus. We'll divide into these two. 5 and an x. Good. Divide that out. That gives you y plus 6. What do you notice? Works, right? They match. So you get y plus 6 times what? In any particular order? No, you could reverse them if you wanted to. Makes no difference. Okay?
I got it right, but then I did it without ordering it like that, and I still got it.
You just put it in order according to the x's or something, or
No, I
just
just
rearranged
left
it?
it as is. I don't know.
You left it like that and still got that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't have both, so I don't know see it.
Well, I'll look at it and see. Okay. All right, so there's your completed answer. Make sure you're putting these things in parentheses, right, because they have to be multiplied together, so you have to make sure you're keeping your parentheses around them all. Okay, what else? So, what was the key to making grouping work? Taking out a what? What's it called when you take out something that divides into all of them? The GCF. That's the, yeah. So the GCF was the key to making grouping work. We didn't really do anything other than break them in half and then find the GCF, did we? And finding the GCF is based on dividing terms, which is the first thing we did the review the very first day. So keep in mind that what we're doing here is just building on the knowledge that we already had. And that's the key to being able to do algebra. You've got to build on what you've done before. But you see, the building of it is very similar. We're doing the same operation over and over, finding the GCF. We're just having to find it in two separate groups, right? So we had to do something first in order to be able to find the GCF. So keep that in mind. It's not like you get a new world every day, right? You're doing the same things over and over again, but you may have to kind of rearrange it a little bit. That's what you do all the time. When you drive a car, do you ever do anything more than go forward, reverse, right or left? No. But does that mean that you're going to go the same forward, reverse, right or left everywhere you go? Nope. You're using the same operations to get to different places by doing them in a different order. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's what you're doing here as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to move on with our factoring. So again, we're still talking about factoring, right? And the first step in factoring anything is to what? Yeah, look for the GCF. Is it always going to be there? Nope. Okay. What do you do next? Count the number of terms. Why is it important that I know how many terms that I have? Know what method to use. And last time, we looked at what happens when you have exactly 4 terms. And you use what method? Grouping. Well, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens when you have exactly 3 terms. Now, there are lots of different methods for factoring something with 3 terms. And the most common method used, and don't even write this down because it's not the one we're going to use, is the FOIL method. But I can watch most people's career in high school algebra go along, okay, I'm good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. Teacher says FOIL, don't understand anything she said from then on. Right? Because FOIL is guess and check. Now, if you're not strong in mathematics, what are you probably worse at? Guessing, yeah. Right? If you don't understand what's going on, how are you going to guess the answer? Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a method that is very step by step. You do this, you get this. Every time. Now, if you already know how to work FOIL, that's perfectly fine. You use FOIL. I don't care. You don't have to change. But most people don't know how to make it work all the time. You can make it work for the smaller ones, but you can't make it work if the numbers get bigger, kind of thing. Okay? All right, yeah, we're just going to get those two parentheses. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at something called the AC method. Now, the AC method is also known as grouping. But I don't like two different things that have the same name. You're going to see why they still call it grouping. Because in reality, the AC method is not a factoring method. The AC method is simply a way of turning something with 3 terms into something with 4 terms. And if you have 4 terms, you factor it by what? Grouping. So do you see why they call it grouping? The actual factoring you do is grouping. But you have to get it to be from 3 terms to 4 terms first. Okay? So we're going to call it the AC method. And you'll see some books do, some books don't. Now, again, this is used when you have how many terms? 3 terms. Now, when we have 3 terms, there is a bit of something you have to do. They need to first be in descending order. Now, descending order wasn't absolutely necessary when you were factoring by grouping. Some of them worked without being in descending order, but some of them didn't work without being in descending order, right? So here's the key. Descending order always is the best. So even if they're not arranged in descending order from the beginning and you could factor it with using grouping, you really should arrange them in descending order. Okay? I never do. If it's factored by grouping, I try it first. If it works, I'd leave it the way it was. Why put one more step in it, right? But if you have to, you need to. But with 3 terms, you must put them in descending order. Okay? If they're not in descending order, this simply won't work. We also want to talk a little bit about what's called the general form of a trinomial. Trinomial because why? 3 terms. Tri means 3, right? So we're going to look at the general form of a trinomial. The general form of a trinomial in descending order is ax squared plus bx plus c. Where instead of putting in the coefficients, this is called the general form because it doesn't have the numbers in it. So it's not a specific trinomial. A, B, and C in a real trinomial would be numbers. So for example, it would be, sorry, that's supposed to be an arrow. It would be like 3x squared plus 6x plus 5, for example. Okay? Just see, this is called the general or algebraic form because they're using letters in place of the numbers. Okay? This is an actual trinomial. And notice that instead of A, B, and C, we have our numbers, right? But A, B, and C, think the alphabet. What A, B, and C are the what? First, second, and third letters of the alphabet. And that's the way these will be arranged. So if I told you to tell me from this one which number is the same as A, what would you say? 3 is A. What would B be? B would be the 6. And what's C? The 5, right? It's the first, second, and third number. First, second, and third letter. Did you see it? It's just determining the order. So if I say A, that's automatically which one? The first one. If I say B, that automatically means the second one. And C automatically means the what? Third one. And we're going to use that A, B, and C in our notes as we go. So notice that this is in descending order. X squared, X, and then our number. And A is the first one, B is the second one, and C is the third one. Okay? So that's all I mean by A, B, and C. First one, second one, and third one. We okay? So let's look at some steps. Okay. The first step in the AC method is to simply multiply A times my C. Okay. What's A? The first number. What's C? The third number, right? And A, B, and C are only the numbers, not the variables. Okay? Because if you stick the variables in there, you're going to make a big mess out of it. Don't want the letters, just the numbers. When you do that, you're going to get something that we're going to call AC. Because literally A, C stuck together side by side like that means multiply A times C. Now, of course, these are going to be numbers, so if it was like 2 and 8, what would AC be? 16. All right? Second step. Find the two factors. What does it mean to be a factor? That means things that divide in how? Evenly, right? Okay, well, but we're just looking at a number, right? So just factors means divide in evenly. Two factors of AC that will combine. What does it mean to combine things in mathematics? Either add or subtract, depending on the sign, right? You use the sign rules to tell you whether you're adding or subtracting. That will combine to make B. What the heck is a B? Second number. You bet. Good. So, right? So you see where everything's coming from? A is the first one, B is the second one, C is the third one. So you're going to multiply the first one and the third one, and then find things that the factors of that make the middle one. Now that's just what you're doing. You know me. I'm going to give you steps, right? Because I don't like anything to be any questions. It's going to be this when you do. So what? Let's talk about the steps for finding these. First thing, simply list factors. And remember, that means things that divide evenly, okay, of AC. And when you're listing factors, do it in order. Don't just jump around and say, well, let me try 5, let me try 7, let me try whatever. Okay? List the factors in order. Okay? So, list the factors. So 1 goes into every number, right? So that's what you should start with, 1 in the number itself. Then you try 2, then you try 3, 4, etc. Now you don't have to list every factor of the number. You only have to list factors until you get the combination that works. So let me tell you say what that means. So list the factors of AC until you get two numbers, because remember these factors of AC are just going to be numbers, two numbers that will combine, which means either add or what? Subtract. To make your B. Now, when you're doing that, the biggest mistakes students make are the signs. Remember, they can only add together if the signs are the same, right? And they can only subtract if the signs are different. If you want two things to add together to make a positive, they both have to be positive, right? Because remember, you add, you keep the sign and add the numbers if the signs are the same. If you want to add them together and get a negative, they both have to be what? Negative. If I'm subtracting and I want to get a positive, what does that tell me about the two numbers? Be careful. If you're subtracting, that means the signs are not the same, but what? Different. And if I'm getting an answer that's positive, that means which one of them was the positive one? The larger one. Remember, because it's keep the sign of the larger and subtract? What if I want to subtract and get a negative? Will the signs be the same or different? The only way you can subtract is if the signs are different, right? And you want to subtract and get a negative, what does that tell you about the two numbers? The larger one was negative. Remember your sign rules, right? It's exactly the same as your sign rules, except you just have to think about them in a different order, right? You're not going to be given the signs. You have to just figure out which signs you need. So if you have to add them together, what does that tell you about the two signs you need? They're the same, right? We don't necessarily know positive or negative. They're the same. But if you're subtracting to get your number, what does that tell you about the signs? They have to be different, okay? And then whatever sign your number is, that tells you which sign you need. Okay? So we're just going to list factors of AC in order until you get two numbers that will combine, which means either add or subtract, to make what? B. And when you're doing that, watch those signs. Okay? Once you find the right combination of numbers, then the next step is to simply replace the B term. Now notice I didn't say just B this time. I said the B what? Term, which means the whole thing. Sign, number, and letter, right? The B term with those two new factors. But remember that when we're finding the numbers, all we use is the numbers. But when we put it all back together, we got to put the letters back in there. So make sure that you remember the variable or variables, right? Depending on if you have more than one letter. Okay. So replace the B term with those two new factors. And when you replace it back there, remember you're replacing the entire term, so you have to put what back in it? The variables, the letters. Okay? All right. Now, if I started out with 3 terms, but then I broke the middle term into 2 new terms, how many terms do you have now? 4. And if you have 4 terms, what do? Factor by grouping. So the factoring we're going to do is the exact same. And that's one reason the book calls it still grouping. What we have to do, the only thing new in the AC method, is we have to look at how to turn that middle term into 2 pieces. So we then have 4. So next step, step 4. Forgot me. Yeah. So step 4 is you now have 4 terms which factors by what? Grouping. So the AC method is not even really a factoring method. The AC method is simply a way of turning something with 3 terms into something with 4 terms so that you can then use grouping. Okay? Because grouping is about the easiest thing you could possibly do once you learn it well enough. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples of these. We're going to take 2 days of working with the AC method. And the reason for that is we're going to reintroduce the greatest common factor later, not today, but next time. And the AC method, or factoring trinomials, something with 3 terms, is the most common factoring method there is. So you really need to understand it, right? If it's the one that's used more than any other, then you probably need to understand that one, right? So we're going to spend 2 days working with this one. So let's look at some examples. Say, for example, we have 3r squared plus 8r plus 5. Here's our polynomial. And the directions even say factor by grouping. But can I use grouping on this thing right now? No, because grouping is the method you use for factoring something that has what? 4 terms. And this thing only has 3. Okay? Is there a GCF for every term? No. 3 terms, we're going to use the, what's it called? AC method. And what's the first step for using the AC method? A times C. Now when you do that, you watch your signs. So is it in descending order? Yeah. So what's my A? 3. Now notice I skipped a line. And I just do that. And you don't have to, but watch why I do it. What's your C? Positive 5. If you multiply positive 3 times positive 5, you get positive what? 15. And I always put that sign in front, even if it's a positive, because what did I tell you is the most common mistake students make? Signs. So the more you can remind yourself to watch your signs, the better off you're going to be. Now, we're looking for the 2 factors of positive 15 that'll combine to make my B. What is B in this case? What kind of 8? Positive 8. And this is why I skip a line. And that's because I always rewrite my B so that I know exactly what it is I'm looking for and I know what sign. You don't have to, because it's right above there. You could underline it if you want to, or just look at it. It's fine. It depends on you. if you're good enough and you're not going to make mistakes with signs or forgetting which number you're looking for, then you don't need to do this. But if you're worried at all, the more things you can do to remind you of what you're supposed to be doing, the better off you are. Okay? So that's why I skip a sign and rewrite it. So then we want to find the two factors of AC that combine to make what? B. Good. So to do that, all I'm going to do is start listing things that divide into my AC. My AC is positive 15. Well, 1 goes into 15 times. Now remember, they need to divide into AC, but they have to combine, which means either add or what? Subtract to make B. Well, if you add 15 and 1, what do you get? Is 16 what I want? If you subtract 1 from 15, you get what? 14. Is 14 what I want? So that combination doesn't work. See the logic? You add them, subtract them. If they make your number good, if they don't make your number, move on. Will 2 divide into 15? Nope. But 3 will. How many times? 5 times. Now if I subtract 5 and 3, what do you get? 2. Is 2 what I want? But if I add 5 and 3, what do you get? Is that what I want? Yes. So I need to add them. Now think your sign rules. If you're adding, the only way you can add is if the signs are the same or different. The same, right? The sign rules say that you combine it, that if the only way you add is if the signs are the same. And I want to add to get what sign up here? Positive. So adding means the signs have to be the same. And if I'm going to add them and get a positive, what does that tell me about both of these things? They both have to be positive. Exactly. Okay. Now, I know what numbers I'm going to use to replace my B, right? I'm going to use these two to replace my B term. So that's the next step. Replace the B term. The 3r squared is not going to change. We used the 3 to find the AC, right? But we're not going to ever change it. The thing that we're replacing is this 8r. When we're going to replace it with this 3 and this 5, but what did it have up here that they don't have? An r. So it's going to be positive 3r and positive 5r. And then just bring down your positive 5.
So both get R?
Yes, they both have to have an r. Because remember, they don't only have to add up to make 8, they have to add up to make 8r. And the only way to do that is if they both have an r in them. So remember the variables. Whatever this B term had in them, they both need. Okay? So what if if the B had an X in it, then they both have to have a what? An X. Can't say it, but that's what I meant. All right. What do you notice about the thing we have now? No longer has 3 terms, but 4, which factors by grouping. And it's always going to separate right between those two new terms you just got. What's common to the first two? 3 and a what? R. Divide out 3r, you're left with r plus what? 1. What do you do with that plus? Drop it down. What's common to 5r and 5? Divide them both by 5, you get r plus what? 1. What do you notice about the parentheses? And they have to. So that gives me r plus 1 in the first one, and what? And that's your completed answer. So the factoring didn't change. We just have to be able to break that middle term into 2 terms so that we get 3, instead of 3 we have 4. Okay? So that's all there is to the AC method, is being able to break that middle term into 2 terms. And the process for doing it never changes. Right? So let's look at another one. Say we have 8m squared minus 6m minus 5. Okay, we're told to factor this. The first thing you do when you're factoring anything is look for the GCF. Good. Anything divide into 8, 6, and 5? Is there an m in all of them? So is there a GCF? No. Second step is to count the number of terms. Why? To know what method. Good. And in this case, I have exactly how many terms? 3 terms. 3 terms for us, we're going to use the AC method. What's the first step for the AC method? A times C. What is my A? Is it in descending order, first of all? Yeah? What's my A? 8 times, what's my C? Negative 5. Those of you who just said 5 just lost. Right? What is it? Yeah. If you make a sign error here, then everything you do after that's garbage. So what's 8 times negative 5 going to make? Negative 40. I'm looking for the two factors of negative 40 that will combine to make what? Negative 6. Okay? Don't worry about it. It's the most common mistake. All right? So we're just going to take 40 over here, negative 40, and start listing factors of 40. 1 goes into it what? 40 times. If you add 1 and 40, you get what? Is that what I'm looking for? If you subtract 1 from 40, you get 39. Is that what I'm looking for? No. So will 1 and 40 work? 2 goes into it 20 times. If you add them, you get 22. Is that what I want? If you subtract them, you get 18. Is that what I want? Nope. So those won't work. Will 3 go into it? No. But 4 will. How many times? 10 times. If you add 10 and 14, you get 10 and 4, you get 14. Is that what I want? No. But if you subtract them, you get what? Is that what I want? You bet. In order to be able to subtract these numbers, though, what does that tell me about the signs that I need? They have to be different, right? One has to be positive, the other's negative. That's the only way you can subtract, isn't it? And we want to get what kind of 6 in our answer? What does that tell me then? Be careful. Which one? Ah, right. We want to get a negative answer, so which one has to be the negative one? The bigger one has to be negative, right? So which means the 4 has to be positive? Because negative 10 plus 4 is the only way to get a negative 6, right? Now be careful. I still have to make sure that those numbers still make the negative 40 I started with. Because sometimes you'll get down here and you'll find a sign combination that works to give you your B, but it doesn't give you your AC anymore. Okay? Does a positive times a negative still make the negative 40 that I started with? Yeah. So check the signs. Every time you're working with this, you've got to check the signs. They have to make B, but if you've changed the signs to some combination that doesn't make what you started with, you're in trouble, right? Okay. Now, will the 8m squared change? No. I no longer have negative 6m. What am I going to have? Plus 4m and what? Minus 10m. Remember, it had an m in up there, so they both need an m in them down there. And then what? Minus 5. Which means I no longer have 3 terms, but 4, which factors by grouping. Break them in half. 8m squared and 4m will both divide by what? 4m. Excellent. Which gives me 2m plus 1. There you go. What do I do with that minus? We'll divide into 10m and 5. 5, so we're dividing by negative 5. Good. Negative 10m divided by negative 5 is positive 2m. Good. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. Good. Thank you for those signs, guys. What do you notice about the parentheses? Yep. And they have to. So we get 2m plus 1 times 4m minus 5. And there's your completed answer. Okay. All right. Nothing can change except the numbers. 20m squared plus 39m plus 7. Now, a problem like this is where FOIL usually breaks down. Well, this one's not even that bad, because when the numbers start getting bigger, it's harder to guess and check. And there are more numbers to choose from. So that's one reason the AC method makes so much sense, because you're not always going to have little tiny numbers. Sometimes you're going to get huge numbers. And being able to list those factors, make a list so that you don't have to guess about what you're using, just makes sense in those cases. First of all, is there a GCF for every term? How many terms? Is it in descending order? Yes. So we're going to use the AC method. What is A? Times, what's my C? Which gives me an AC of positive what? 140, right? Okay. Now 140 is a big number. It's going to have a lot of factors. Tough. You got a calculator? Use it. But you're going to have to go through the list of numbers. So we're looking for the two factors of 140 that'll combine together to make what? Positive 39, exactly. Good, excellent. 1 goes into it 140 times, but if you add them, you get 141. If you subtract them, you get 139. Is that what I'm looking for? No. 2 goes into it 70 times. If you add them, you get 72. If you subtract them, you get 68. Is that what I want? No. Will 3 go into it? No. 4 will, though. How many times? Pardon? 35? And if you add 4 and 35, you get? Is that what I want? Yeah. Well, the only way they can add is if the signs are the same or different.
Same.
And I want to get a positive, so that means they both have to be. Remember, you got to check that up here, though. Does a positive times a positive still give you the positive you started with? So those are your signs, and those are your numbers. What do I do with the 20m squared? Bring it down. I no longer have positive 39m. What am I going to have? Plus 4m plus 35m. Excellent. Remember, when you put them back in, you've got to put the letters back in. What do I do with the positive 7? Just bring it down. I used it to find AC, but then after that it's going to stay the same. Which means I no longer have 3 terms, but 4, which factors by grouping. What's common to the first two? Yeah, 20 and 4, both divided by 4. What else? There's also an m in both of them, right? So we'll go back and divide by 4m. That gives me 5m plus what? 1. Bring down the plus. We'll divide into 35 and 7. 7. Divide that out, you get 5m plus 1. What do you notice about the parentheses? And they have to. So we're going to get 5m plus 1 times what? And that's your completed answer. Looking possible?
Yeah.
Oh, baloney. Not bad as long as you learn what? How to do the examples? The steps, the method. If you don't know when to ask yourself what question, you're gone, right? You've got to really watch those steps. Let's look at another one. 12a squared minus 5ab minus 2b squared. Now this one looks different because it has more letters in it. Does that mean we need a new method? No. GCF, is there one for every term? How many terms?
3.
Uses the AC method. Now this one is in descending order because a squared, a, and then no a's, right? Now if you wanted to put it in order by b's, could you do that? Sure. It'd be b squared, ab, and then no b's. But since the a squared is positive, I'd really rather have the a squared first, right? So, and besides, typically you use alphabetical order. So if you have a's and b's, you use a anyway. Now, what's the A term? Positive 12. Remember, just using the numbers. What's your C? What? Negative 2. Watch those signs. Which gives you an AC of negative 24. Looking for the two factors of negative 24 that will combine to make what? Negative 5. Okay? So let's start listing things that divide into 24. 1 goes into it 24 times. If you add them, you get 25. Is that what I want?
No.
If you subtract them, you get 23. Is that what I want? No. Nope. 2 goes into it what? If you add them, you get 14. Is that what I want? If you subtract them, you get 10. Is that what I want? Nope. 3 goes into it what? If you add them, you get 11. Is that what I want? If you subtract them, you get... Is that what I want? Yes. So if I'm going to be subtracting them, that tells me the signs are going to be the same or different? Different. And what sign do I want to get as my answer? So that means what about these two numbers? 8 is negative and then 3 is positive, right? Because the sign you want, the bigger one has to be the sign you want your answer to be, right? But does a positive times a negative still make your negative 24? You bet it does, right? So those are my signs and my numbers. Bring down your 12a squared. Now I'm going to replace the b term with my two new numbers. But what does it have up here that they don't have? So what do they both need? Yeah. Not one is an A and the other's a B. Whatever B has, they need exactly the same thing. So it's going to be positive 3AB minus 8AB. If you put an A here and a B there, they wouldn't be like terms, right? And that won't work. They have to be like terms. Okay? Minus your 2b squared. Which means I no longer have 3 terms, but 4, which factors by grouping. 12 and 3 will both divide by 3. A squared and A will both divide by A. So we got 3A as our common factor in the first group. Dividing that out gives us 4A plus what? B. Good. What about this minus? Bring it down. 8 and 2 will both divide by 2. Is there anything else common? The plain old B, right? But remember, we already have a sign there, so we're divided by negative 2b. Negative 8ab, divide out negative 2b, you get what? Positive 4 what? A. Negative 2b squared divided by negative 2b leaves what? Positive b. Good. What do you notice about the 2 sets of parentheses? And they have to. So we're going to get 4a plus b in the first parentheses times what?
Minus 2b.
And that is your completed answer. Okay. And nothing can change except how many numbers you have, okay, and the signs, etc. Other than that, the process will always be the same. Okay. Stop that.